When I saw the bulldozer flatten my wife's rose garden, I didn't scream. I didn't run. I just reached into the pocket of my flannel pajama pants, pulled out my phone, and checked the status on the lawsuit tracker. Filed. Time-stamped. Ready to detonate. It was surreal. I stood there in my driveway, steaming mug in hand, watching as this massive machine clawed through the eastern strip of my property like it was clearing land for a shopping mall. The crew didn't even glance at me. One of them even waved, as if they were doing me a favor by trimming some hedges. But that strip of dirt wasn't just land, it was sacred. My late wife, Sarah, planted those roses every spring for 16 years. That patch held memories, not just mulch. And now it was gone. The gravel, the survey flags, and the smug figure standing on her manicured lawn across the street completed the scene. Rhonda Willoughby, or Karen, as everyone in the neighborhood called her behind her back, stood there like some monarch surveying her conquest. Sunglasses too large for her face, clipboard clutched to her chest like a badge, and the smirk of someone who believed she had just pulled off the heist of the century. She strutted over like she was doing me a favor. "Frank," she cooed, syrup dripping off her words, "isn't it wonderful? The new access road is going to make things so much easier for the whole community. And it cuts through that brushy area on your land. Nobody was using it anyway." I blinked. My eye twitched. That brushy area was actually a grove of cedar trees I'd planted with Sarah back in 1987. I kept my voice level. "You do realize you're building a road on private land, right?" She chuckled, like she was correcting a child. "Oh, honey, check the HOA's easement map. It's all above board. We've had this plan for months." I didn't need to check. I'd seen their so-called map. It looked like a drunk raccoon drew it. They marked my property as a communal green space. I'd never signed anything. Never approved an easement. Never even got a courtesy call. It was like I didn't exist, or like they thought I was too old and senile to notice. And then came Greg, Karen's husband, HOA muscle, and full-time golf cart cowboy. He rolled up like a deputy from a spaghetti western, his cart outfitted with hazard lights and a megaphone. He parked square in the middle of my gravel drive. "Safety perimeter," he barked, chest puffed. "Construction zone, Frank. Gonna have to use the back exit today." I sipped my coffee slowly and suppressed the urge to hurl the mug at his forehead. They thought they were untouchable. What they didn't know was that 3 weeks earlier, I noticed survey markers start popping up like mushrooms after a rain. I'm retired, not blind. I played dumb, acted confused. Then I called Sandra Lang, high school friend, Tri-County's fiercest land use attorney, and someone you absolutely wanted on your side. Sandra went nuclear on the paperwork. Deeds, county records, parcel lines, she tore them apart like a bloodhound on a scent. And then we filed. Trespassing. Destruction of private property. Unauthorized construction. The lawsuit was stacked with $750,000 in damages, anchored by historic preservation statutes, and stamped the day before the bulldozers showed up. While Karen and Greg were strutting around with their cones and clipboards, I was filming. I had drones flying overhead, trail cams recording from the cedar fence posts. Every inch of dirt displaced, every smug word, every insult. And then it got better. One of the construction workers urinated behind my shed. On camera. Trespassing. Environmental violation. Vandalism. The HOA might as well have written my case for me. Later that afternoon, Karen delivered a folded piece of paper like it was the Magna Carta. A notice of violation for me. Claimed I was interfering with authorized infrastructure improvement. I chuckled, stuck it on the fridge next to a magnet that said, "I'm retired, not expired." That night, Baxter, my old retriever, curled up beside me on the porch. The stars peeked out from behind the pine tops. Diesel fumes lingered where roses used to bloom. I scratched his ears and whispered, "They're building their own coffin, one shovel at a time." You see, people like Karen mistake volume for authority. They treat entitlement like a virtue. But when you bulldoze the wrong person's memories, when you dig up the wrong patch of soil, you better come prepared for the fight. The next morning, I watched from my truck as they laid the first layer of asphalt. Karen applauded like she'd just invented sliced bread. Greg passed out lemonade. I sent Sandra one word. Go. 10 minutes later, she filed a motion to expedite. The fuse was lit. They had no clue what was coming. Over the next days, the crew pushed deeper across my land. Trucks beeped. Cement mixers churned. I watched it all. Let them dig deeper into their own grave. I walked the work zone one afternoon, making small talk with the foreman. Recorded every word. When I asked who gave permission, he scratched his head and muttered, "Some HOA lady, Willoughby, I think." That recording alone was gold. It showed they had no permit, no formal agreement, just a clipboard queen's say-so. Back home, I organized my evidence. I had blueprints, surveys, time-stamped aerials, even a video tour Sarah and I made during a spring bloom. That land was mine. Legally. Unambiguously. When Greg blocked my driveway again with a construction net and authorized vehicles only sign, I calmly lifted it and drove through. I could hear him squawk into a radio behind me like I'd robbed a bank. Sandra and I visited the county archives next. We found the smoking gun, a nullified easement from 1979, void unless all bordering landowners agreed. I hadn't. Neither had Hal, the reclusive veteran on the north end who hated the HOA even more than I did. Karen knew. We found records showing she tried to revive the easement and was denied. That made everything willful. Legally, that's a different beast. That's not ignorance. That's trespass with intent. I quietly emailed a few board members, asking if they'd approve the road. 3 said no. One even forwarded minutes from a meeting where Karen described the project as entirely on HOA land. They had no idea. And then it got worse for them. The county inspector showed up. Not because of the HOA, but because Karen had filed a formal complaint against me, claiming I was the one illegally building a road. I gave the inspector, Carla, a full tour. Showed her everything. When she left, she said, "Third false report I've gotten from that HOA this year. Don't worry, you're good." I handed her a flash drive with drone footage. She laughed and said, "If I ever go to court, I want you on my side." That same evening, Karen hosted a community celebration for the road. They brought cupcakes, banners, a bounce house. I kid you not, they threw a party. On my land. I walked over calmly. When Karen chirped, "Frank, so glad you could join us," I simply held up my phone. "You're being filmed for legal documentation. Please refrain from speaking unless you'd like your words submitted to court." Her smile cracked. The best part? My drone had caught the crew bulldozing a nesting site for wood thrushes protected by state conservation laws. One worker laughed as he tossed a broken egg into the trash. Sandra's jaw clenched when I showed her. "That's not just civil," she said. "That's criminal. That's state level." We reported it. Multiple agencies got involved. Karen, oblivious, still tried to find me for flying drones. I framed her letter, hung it next to the HOA notice and a photo of the bulldozer on my wife's roses. That wall in my shed started to look like an art exhibit titled, "Delusions of Authority." And then the press caught wind. A local blog ran the story. HOA builds road through private land, destroys protected wildlife. It exploded. By the time we entered court, the case was a wildfire. Karen looked like she was headed to a garden party. Greg wore a wrinkled suit and sweat. Their lawyer stammered through fairy tales about neighborhood vision and implied consent. Sandra calmly dropped the hammer, deeds, footage, environmental letters, signed affidavits, and video of Karen saying we didn't need his permission. Then we brought in Mr. Howerin, the retired surveyor Karen tried to bribe. He testified. Under oath. Karen's face drained. The judge ruled fast. Full damages awarded. $750,000. Plus restoration of land. Cease and desist. Possible criminal investigation. HOA insurance? Voided. The cost? Coming straight from their dues. Greg vanished. Karen was removed as president. The new board, led by a retired librarian named Janice, showed up at my door one afternoon with oatmeal cookies and a handwritten apology. "We didn't know," she said. "We should have asked more questions." I forgave, but I didn't forget. A developer offered me a hefty buyout. I declined. Instead, I used part of the settlement to turn the destroyed strip into a wildflower trail. Local kids come now on field trips. Teachers talk about conservation. My wife would have loved it. And just when I thought it was over, a letter arrived. Karen was suing me for emotional distress, cited anxiety, public shame, demanded $150,000. I laughed so hard, Baxter barked. Sandra's response was one line. "This is a textbook abuse of process." Denied. The neighborhood feels different now. Quieter, kinder, more respectful. I walk the trail each morning with Baxter. Coffee in hand, wind in the trees, peace restored. Some people think justice is about vengeance. For me, it was about dignity. And every bloom along that wildflower path, that's proof it was worth it.